I'm Samantha Reed, 28, and today should have been perfect. The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom gleams with crystal chandeliers I've dreamed about since childhood. My gorgeous white dress feels magical, but as I peek past the double doors, my stomach drops. The front row seats reserved with satin ribbons and handwritten cards sit empty. My parents aren't coming. I always knew they favored my sister Jessica, but I never thought they'd actually boycott the most important day of my life. My own parents chose my sister's ego over my happiness. Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of real-life storytellers. Now, let me take you back to where this family drama really began. Growing up in our comfortable colonial home in suburban Boston, I always felt like I was living in Jessica's shadow. Our family wasn't wealthy, but my father Richard's job as a financial advisor and my mother Catherine's position as a school administrator provided us with a solidly upper-middle-class life. We had the annual summer vacations to Cape Cod, private tennis lessons, and the expectation that both daughters would attend prestigious colleges. Jessica was 4 years older than me, and from as early as I can remember, she was the golden child. While I was building sandcastles at the beach, she was winning swimming competitions. When I was struggling through algebra, she was acing AP Calculus. By the time I entered high school, Jessica had already graduated as valedictorian and was heading to Cornell University with a partial scholarship. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the unofficial family motto. Jessica studied economics, graduated with honors, and immediately landed a job at a respected consulting firm in Boston. Meanwhile, I found my passion in graphic design, creative, visual, and nothing like Jessica's world of spreadsheets and client presentations. My parents never hid their preference. At family gatherings, they'd proudly announce Jessica's latest promotion or bonus. When it was my turn, my mother would smile tightly and say something like, "Samantha is doing her art thing. It makes her happy." The dismissive tone wasn't subtle. Jessica herself wasn't openly cruel, but she perfected the art of the backhanded compliment. "That outfit is so bold, I could never pull off something so attention-grabbing." Or, "Your apartment has such a unique style, it's nice you don't care about what others think." Each comment reinforced what my parents had always implied. Jessica was proper, professional, and perfect. I was loud, artistic, and somehow lacking. By the time Jessica got engaged to Bradley, a fellow Cornell graduate who worked in finance, I had built a successful career as a senior designer at a respected advertising agency. But at Jessica's engagement dinner, my father toasted the first daughter to make this important life step as if it were a competition I was losing. Jessica's wedding 3 years ago was exactly what my parents considered appropriate. She held the ceremony at our family's long-attended church, followed by a reception at the local country club where my parents were members. The color scheme was pale blue and cream. The centerpieces were modest floral arrangements, and the band played only classic, non-controversial music. My parents beamed throughout the entire day, and my mother mentioned at least a dozen times how sensible and tasteful everything was. 2 months after Jessica's wedding, I met Ryan at an art gallery opening featuring some of my freelance work. He stood in front of my favorite piece, a vibrant digital composition with bold colors and unexpected elements for nearly 20 minutes. When I finally approached him, he said, "I've been trying to figure out how someone managed to perfectly capture what joy would look like if you could see it." We talked until the gallery closed, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. Ryan worked as a software architect for a successful tech company. He was creative in his own way, building elegant solutions to complex problems. Unlike my family, he never compared me to anyone else. He loved my loud laugh, encouraged my bold fashion choices, and hung my artwork proudly in his apartment. After dating for 2 years, we had built a comfortable life together. We both had established careers, a cozy apartment in a trendy part of Boston, and enough savings to plan for our future. When Ryan proposed during a weekend trip to the Maine coastline, I knew immediately that our wedding would be a true reflection of us, vibrant, joyful, and unapologetically authentic. "I want our wedding to be colorful and fun," I told Ryan as we drove back to Boston. "Something completely different from Jessica's wedding." "It should be exactly what you want," Ryan said, squeezing my hand. "This is our day, no one else's." If only I had known then how much those words would be tested. Ryan's proposal was everything Id dreamed of but never expected. Had arranged a private sunset picnic on a secluded stretch of Ogunquit Beach. As the sky painted itself in spectacular shades of pink and orange, he pulled out a vintage ring box. "Samantha," he said, his voice slightly shaking. "You've brought colors into my life I didn't even know existed. Would you marry me and keep making everyday life extraordinary?" The ring was perfect, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, unique and vibrant, just like our relationship. I said yes through happy tears and spent the next hour calling friends before finally working up the courage to call my parents. Mom answered on the fifth ring. "Hello, Samantha." "Mom, I have amazing news," Ryan proposed. "We're getting married." My voice bubbled with excitement. There was a pause before she responded. "That's nice, dear, but don't rush into anything. Marriage is a serious commitment." "We've been together for 2 years, Mom. We're not rushing," I said, my excitement deflating. "Well, congratulations. I'll tell your father when he gets home." Her tone was the same one she used when I'd tell her about a new art project, politely interested but clearly underwhelmed. Dad called back 3 hours later. After a brief congratulations, he immediately asked, "What's Ryan's financial situation like?" "These tech jobs can be unstable. Has been with his company for 6 years and was recently promoted," I answered, feeling like I was submitting Ryan's resume for approval. "Just making sure he can provide properly," Dad replied. "We don't want you struggling." Neither of them asked to see the ring or suggested celebrating. A week later, we had dinner at my parents' house to properly announce the engagement. Somehow, Jessica and Bradley were there too. My mother had invited them without mentioning it to me. "Let me see the ring," Jessica said immediately, extending her hand. She examined my sapphire, then glanced meaningfully at her own large diamond solitaire. "It's certainly unique." Bradley knew I preferred classics, they never go out of style. Throughout dinner, Jessica dominated the conversation with stories about a colleague's disastrous wedding where everything that could go wrong did. "That's why Bradley and I kept things simple," she concluded. "Not everyone needs a fancy wedding to be happy." My mother nodded enthusiastically. Jessica's wedding was perfect, elegant but sensible. "We're actually thinking about the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown," I said, mentioning the historic luxury hotel I'd admired since childhood. "They have this amazing ballroom with crystal chandeliers." The table went silent. My father cleared his throat. "That sounds expensive. We've been saving," Ryan interjected. "We can afford it." "Well," my mother said with a tight smile, "there's no need to be extravagant. Jessica's wedding was lovely, and they didn't need all that flash." Jessica nodded. "We put a down payment on our house with what we saved on the wedding." The message was clear. Sensible people like Jessica and Bradley invested in their future rather than wasting money on a single day. People like Ryan and me were irresponsible for wanting something more elaborate. After dinner, as we walked to the car, Ryan squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" "I'm used to it," I said, though the familiar ache of disapproval still hurt. "Your wedding day should be what you want," Ryan said firmly. "Not what your sister had or what your parents think is appropriate." I smiled up at him, grateful for his support. "You're right. This is our wedding, not theirs." If only I'd recognized the warning signs that night, the tight smiles, the pointed comments about sensible choices, the way Jessica kept bringing up her own wedding as the gold standard. Maybe I could have prepared myself better for what was coming, but I was still hoping, deep down, that just once my parents might embrace my vision rather than expecting me to conform to Jessica's. The Grand Plaza Hotel was even more beautiful than I remembered. Ryan and I toured the venue on a sunny Saturday, walking through the grand lobby with its marble floors and ornate ceiling. When we entered the ballroom, I actually gasped. Massive crystal chandeliers hung from an intricately carved ceiling. Tall windows lined one wall, offering views of the city garden. The space was elegant but had character, not the sterile, country club atmosphere of Jessica's wedding. "This is it," I whispered to Ryan, squeezing his hand. The event coordinator Natalie showed us available dates and package options. The cost was significant, but not outrageous, especially since we'd both been saving. After a brief discussion, we put down a deposit for a date 10 months away. I feel like I'm floating, I told Ryan as we left. It's going to be perfect. Next, we met with Diane, a highly recommended wedding planner who specialized in personalized celebrations. I shared my vision. Vibrant colors rather than pastels, unique floral arrangements with exotic blooms, a menu featuring global cuisines reflecting our favorite travel experiences, and a live band that could play everything from classic standards to current hits. This is going to be a gorgeous wedding, Diane said enthusiastically. So many personal touches. I left that meeting feeling validated. Finally, someone understood that a wedding could be elegant without being subdued, personal without being unprofessional. My bubble burst 3 days later when my mother called requesting a family meeting to discuss wedding plans. Your father and I would like to go over some things with you and Ryan. Saturday at 2. When we arrived at my parents' house, Jessica's car was in the driveway. Inside, Jessica and Bradley sat in the living room as if they were part of the negotiating team. What are they doing here? I asked, not bothering to hide my annoyance. Jessica has been through this recently, my mother explained. She has valuable insight. My father got straight to the point. We understand you've put a deposit down on the Grand Plaza. Yes, Ryan confirmed. It's exactly what we were looking for. It seems unnecessarily extravagant, Dad said. We're concerned about the message that sends. Message, I repeated. It's not sending a message. It's a beautiful venue for our wedding. Mom leaned forward. Sweetheart, we know you've always had a flair for the dramatic, but weddings aren't about showing off. Jessica nodded sympathetically. Bradley and I kept our focus on the marriage, not the wedding. The country club was perfect, elegant, but reasonable. The Grand Plaza is within our budget, Ryan said calmly. We've worked out all the finances. My father shook his head. Just because you can afford something doesn't mean it's appropriate. This isn't about money, it's about values. What values? I asked, feeling my face flush with anger. Valuing Jessica's choices over mine, as usual. Don't be ridiculous, Mom snapped. This isn't about Jessica. Then why is she even here? I demanded. Jessica looked hurt. I'm just trying to help. I know how overwhelming wedding planning can be. We had a perfectly lovely wedding without all this flash, Mom continued. So did Jessica. Why can't you be practical like your sister? Because I'm not my sister. I finally exploded. I've never been Jessica and I never will be. Ryan and I want a wedding that reflects us, not some duplicate of Jessica's boring country club reception. The room went silent. Jessica's eyes widened, and Bradley looked uncomfortably at the floor. I think that's enough, my father said coldly. If you insist on this extravagance, don't expect us to support it. We won't contribute to this financial irresponsibility. We never asked for your money, Ryan said, standing up. Sam deserves a wedding that makes her happy, not one that meets your arbitrary standards. We left shortly after, the tension thick enough to cut. In the car, I finally broke down crying. Why can't they just be happy for me, just once? Because they're too busy being happy for Jessica, Ryan said, his voice gentle but firm. But this isn't about them, it's about us. That evening, my friend Megan called. We'd been friends since college, and she knew all about my family dynamics. Your mom called me, she said. She wanted me to talk some sense into you about your excessive wedding plans. Are you serious? She's recruiting my friends now. I was furious. Don't worry, Megan assured me. I told her I thought your plans sounded amazing and completely appropriate. Then I suggested she might want to examine why she's so opposed to you having the wedding you want. I bet that went over well, I said with a hollow laugh. About as well as expected, Megan admitted. Look, I've got your back on this. If they won't support you, the rest of us will. Ryan put his arm around me later that night as we looked over wedding websites. We can do this without them, you know. We have the means, and we have people who support us. I nodded, trying to believe it. But the hollow feeling in my chest, the familiar ache of parental disapproval wouldn't go away. Despite the confrontation with my family, I threw myself into wedding planning with renewed determination. If anything, their disapproval made me more committed to creating the celebration Ryan and I truly wanted. Every decision felt like an affirmation. This is our day, this is our life, this is our choice. Diane, our wedding planner, helped schedule appointments with florists, caterers, and bakeries. I created detailed Pinterest boards and spent evenings with Ryan discussing everything from napkin colors to signature cocktails. For the first time in weeks, I felt excited again. Then things started going wrong in subtle, confusing ways. First, the florist called to confirm the cancellation of our consultation. Cancellation, I repeated, confused. I didn't cancel anything. We received a call yesterday, the receptionist explained. A woman identifying herself as Catherine Reed said you were reconsidering your floral arrangements and needed to cancel the appointment. My mother had used her own name, my parents hadn't even tried to hide their interference. Similar calls followed. The bakery, the caterer, the photographer all reporting that someone had contacted them to cancel or reschedule appointments. Diane was getting conflicting messages, unsure which directives were actually coming from me. I'm getting calls from your mother almost daily. Diane admitted uncomfortably during our weekly check-in. She keeps suggesting alternatives to your plans, smaller venues, different vendors, scaled-down options. Please ignore her, I said firmly. She's not involved in the planning or payment for this wedding. I called my mother that evening, hands shaking with anger. Why are you canceling my appointments? I'm trying to help you reconsider before you make costly mistakes, she said calmly, as if sabotaging my wedding plans was perfectly reasonable. It's not your wedding. You don't get to make these decisions. My voice rose with each word. Don't take that tone with me, she snapped. You're being irrational about this whole thing. Your father and I are concerned about your priorities. My priority is having a wedding day that makes Ryan and me happy. Why is that so hard for you to accept? Because you're clearly doing this to overshadow your sister. She finally exploded. Everything has to be a competition with you, Samantha. Jessica had a beautiful, appropriate wedding, but you have to make everything bigger and flashier. I was stunned into momentary silence. That's what this is about? You think I'm competing with Jessica. Aren't you? You always have to be different, make a scene, draw attention to yourself. Before I could respond, I heard Jessica's voice in the background. Is that Sam? Let me talk to her. My sister came on the line, her voice dripping with false concern. Sam, everyone's just worried about you. You're being so emotional and ungrateful about this whole thing. Ungrateful? For what? For Mom canceling my appointments? For Dad threatening to withdraw support? For you constantly undermining my choices? See? This is exactly the kind of hysterical overreaction I was talking about. Jessica said to someone on her end, presumably our mother. I hung up, too angry to continue the conversation. The sabotage escalated. I learned from my aunt that my parents were telling extended family I had become a bridezilla who was planning a ridiculous, over-the-top spectacle. Relatives I had planned to invite began calling with concerns about the wedding. Your mother mentioned you might be under a lot of stress, my grandmother said delicately during one such call. She's worried the wedding planning is becoming unhealthy. Ryan's parents, who had been supportive from the beginning, started expressing concern as well. We're hearing there's some family tension, Ryan's mother said carefully during Sunday dinner at their home. Is everything all right? In a moment of weakness, I considered giving in. Maybe a smaller wedding would be easier. Maybe it wasn't worth the conflict. Maybe I should just accept that nothing I did would ever measure up to Jessica's standard of perfection. Ryan found me that night, staring at the Grand Plaza contract, tears streaming down my face. I'm thinking of canceling, I admitted. Maybe they're right. Maybe this is too much. Ryan sat beside me, taking my hands in his. This isn't about the wedding anymore, is it? This is about your family trying to control you, the same way they always have. I just want them to be happy for me. Sam, listen to me. This is about our future together. Do you want to start that future by letting your family dictate our choices? Because that pattern won't end with the wedding. His words hit me hard. This wasn't just about centerpieces and venues, it was about standing up for the life Ryan and I were building together. That weekend, my cousin Amber called unexpectedly. She'd always been friendly with both Jessica and me, maintaining a careful neutrality in family conflicts. I thought you should know what's really going on, she said after some hesitant small talk. Jessica has been complaining non-stop about your wedding plans. She told Aunt Margaret your wedding is going to make hers look cheap and boring, and she's convinced your parents you're doing it on purpose to embarrass her. That's ridiculous, I said. My wedding has nothing to do with hers. I know that, Amber said quietly. But Jessica has always been insecure about you, even though no one would guess it. You're creative and outgoing, and people are naturally drawn to you. She works so hard to be perfect because she thinks it's the only way to get attention. The revelation stunned me. Jessica, insecure about me? It seemed impossible given how our parents had always favored her. Your parents are enabling her, Amber continued. They've always catered to Jessica's feelings, and they're doing it again. But this time, you don't have to accept it. This is your wedding, Sam. Amber's support gave me the strength to stand firm. I would not change my wedding to protect Jessica's ego or please my parents. As difficult as their disapproval was, giving in would set a pattern for our marriage that I refused to accept. 3 months before the wedding, my parents requested another meeting. Against my better judgment but hoping for reconciliation, I agreed. Ryan came with me, his presence a steady support beside me. Once again, Jessica was there, this time with Bradley beside her. My father sat stiffly in his armchair, while my mother perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. We've been thinking, Mom began, and we have a compromise to propose. I nodded cautiously, willing to at least hear them out. We understand you want your wedding to be special, she continued. But we think there's a middle ground that would make everyone happy. She proceeded to outline what she called a more appropriate wedding, essentially a carbon copy of Jessica's celebration but with different colors. The country club instead of the Grand Plaza, a DJ instead of the live band Wed hired, standard chicken or fish options instead of our carefully selected menu. That's not a compromise, I said when she finished. That's asking us to have Jessica's wedding with minor modifications. It would be lovely, Mom insisted. Elegant but not ostentatious. We've already signed contracts, Ryan pointed out. We'd lose thousands of dollars in deposits. My father waved this away. Better to lose deposits than waste even more on a single day of showing off. We're not showing off, I said, frustration mounting. We're celebrating our marriage in a way that feels right for us, Samantha, my father said, his voice hardening. Your mother and I have discussed this at length. Either you make your wedding less flashy than Jessica's, or we won't attend. The room went silent. Even Jessica looked surprised at the explicit ultimatum. You'd skip my wedding over this, I whispered, unable to process what I was hearing. It's your choice, Dad said firmly. We've made our position clear. Jessica reached over to touch my arm, her face a mask of concern. Sam, this isn't just about the wedding being flashier than mine. It's about family harmony. Something in her tone made me look at her more closely. What exactly is your problem with my wedding, Jess? Jessica glanced at our parents before answering. I just think, well, Bradley and I had a beautiful, meaningful wedding without all the extravagance. It feels like you're trying to one-up us, to be honest. One-up you? I haven't thought about your wedding once while planning mine. That's hard to believe when you've chosen everything bigger and more expensive, she countered. The Grand Plaza instead of the country club. That elaborate 7-course meal instead of a standard reception dinner. Even your dress cost twice what mine did. I stared at her, baffled. How do you even know what my dress cost? Jessica flushed, and my mother jumped in quickly. Jessica is just concerned about the message your choices send. But a terrible suspicion was forming in my mind. How do you know the details of our menu? We haven't shared that with family yet. No one answered. Ryan pulled out his phone and opened our password-protected wedding website, which contained all our wedding details information, Wed only shared with our wedding party and vendors. Have you been accessing our wedding website? He asked directly. Jessica's flush deepened. I was just trying to understand what you were planning. The website is password-protected, I said slowly. How did you get access? My mother intervened. Jessica was concerned, so she showed us what you were planning. We were shocked at the extravagance. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. You hacked our wedding website to spy on our plans? And then used that information to try to sabotage us. Don't be so dramatic, Jessica said dismissively. I just wanted Mom and Dad to see what you were doing. Ryan, usually so calm, finally lost his patience. This has gone far enough. You've canceled appointments, spread rumors to family members, invaded our privacy, and now you're issuing ultimatums. This isn't about the wedding anymore, it's about control. My father stood up, his face red. Don't take that tone in my house, young man. Samantha has always been rebellious and attention-seeking. We're trying to guide her toward more appropriate choices. I'm 28 years old, I exclaimed. I don't need guidance on my own wedding. Then you don't need our presence either, my father said coldly. If you insist on this excessive display, don't expect us to participate. And while we're laying everything out, you should know this affects more than just the wedding. Your inheritance will reflect your willingness to respect family values. The financial threat was the final straw. Are you seriously threatening to cut me out of your will over my wedding choices? Think of it as a consequence for your actions, my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. Actions have consequences, Samantha. You've always struggled to understand that. I stood up, feeling strangely calm despite the chaos around me. I understand perfectly. You've always favored Jessica. You've always expected me to live in her shadow. But not anymore. Ryan and I are getting married at the Grand Plaza. We're having the wedding we've planned. If you choose not to attend, that's your decision. As we walked toward the door, my mother called after me. Think about what you've done, Samantha. Think about how you're dividing this family. In the car, the calm Eve felt inside shattered. I broke down completely, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Ryan held me, his own eyes damp with tears. They really might not come, I choked out between sobs. My own parents might skip my wedding because it's not exactly what Jessica wants. Then they'll miss one of the most beautiful celebrations of love I can imagine, Ryan said softly. And that will be their loss, not ours. I wanted to believe him, but as we drove home in silence, I wondered if anything, even our perfect wedding, was worth the family breach that now seemed inevitable. 2 months before the wedding, life had settled into a strange new normal. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Jessica since the ultimatum. Wedding preparations continued, a strange mix of excitement and heartache. Every decision from table settings to ceremony readings was tinged with the knowledge that my family might not be there to see any of it. The silence from my parents wasn't complete, however. Every few days, Jessica would text me with what she probably thought were olive branches. "It's not too late to fix this, Sam." Or, "Mom and Dad are really hurting over this, you could end this standoff so easily." Each message carried the same subtext. The problem was my stubbornness, not their ultimatum. If I would just give in, everything could go back to normal. Ryan and I were finalizing our guest list when Megan called, her voice tight with anger. "Your mother contacted me again," she said. "She asked me to be part of some kind of intervention, to help you see reason about the wedding." "What did you say?" I asked, though I could guess from her tone. I told her I think your wedding plans sound wonderful and am honored to be your bridesmaid. She suggested you might be having mental health issues related to wedding stress. Mental health issues, I repeated, stunned. "Apparently, you developing a sudden need for extravagance is a sign you're unstable," Megan said sarcastically. "She's contacted at least 3 other friends from your list. Shay's telling everyone Shay's worried about you." The revelation was both infuriating and deeply painful. Not content with their own boycott, my parents were actively trying to turn my friends against me. Diane, our wedding planner, called the next day with more unsettling news. "The family photographer you mentioned, Robert Jenkins, called to say he can no longer shoot your wedding. He was apologetic but said he had a conflict." "That's strange," I said. "He confirmed just last week." "Did he say what happened?" Diane hesitated. "He was vague, but he mentioned something about a call from your mother. I got the impression she may have asked him not to take the job." Robert had been my parents' photographer for years, capturing family events since I was a teenager. He was one of the few connections to my family I'd managed to preserve in the wedding plans. Now even that was gone. More disturbing news came from Amber, who had become a surprising ally throughout the ordeal. "Jessica created a fake Instagram account to follow your wedding planner and some of your friends," she told me during a coffee meeting. "She's monitoring all the wedding posts and updates." "How do you know?" I asked, horrified at this new invasion of privacy. She mentioned it to our cousin Taylor, thinking she'd find it funny. Taylor told me because she thought you should know. A week later, Diane called again, this time sounding genuinely alarmed. Someone called the Grand Plaza claiming to be you, she said. They tried to change several details of your reception, the menu, the table arrangements, even the time. Luckily, the coordinator was suspicious and called me to confirm. Let me guess, I said bitterly. It was Jessica. The coordinator said it was a woman who knew all your details, contract numbers, confirmation codes, everything. She only realized something was off when the caller tried to downgrade your package to something significantly smaller. I felt physically ill. What do we do? I've alerted all vendors to verify any changes directly with me, in person or via video call, Diane assured me. And the Grand Plaza has added security notes to your event. But, Samantha, I have to ask, is there any chance your family might try to disrupt the actual wedding day? The question had never occurred to me, but now it sent a chill down my spine. Would they really go that far? I don't think so, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. But maybe we should consider having some kind of security, just in case. Ryan was furious when I told him about Jessica's latest interference. This has gone from manipulative to obsessive, he said. What is she so afraid of? That I might have something she doesn't, even just for one day. I realized aloud. She's always been the golden child, the perfect daughter. What if, just once, my wedding outshines hers? The most painful moment came when I was selecting photos for a display at the reception. I'd found old family photos, holidays, vacations, childhood moments, hoping to include them alongside pictures of Ryan's family. As I sorted through them, I came across a photo of my father walking Jessica down the aisle at her wedding, both of them beaming with pride. I set it aside, tears streaming down my face. There would be no equivalent photo from my wedding. Ryan's parents, seeing my family's escalating behavior, stepped up their support. They hosted a beautiful engagement dinner for us, inviting their extended family and close friends. Ryan's mother helped address invitations and joined us for a cake tasting when Megan couldn't make it. His father offered financial help, which we politely declined but appreciated deeply. You're family to us now, Samantha, Ryan's mother told me, hugging me tightly after the dinner. Whatever happens with your parents, you're not alone. 1 week before the wedding, I received a final call from my mother. I almost didn't answer, but some desperate hope made me pick up. Samantha, she said, her voice formal. I'm calling to see if you've reconsidered. Reconsidered what? Having the wedding Ryan and I have planned and paid for? No, I haven't, she sighed heavily. Then I need to inform you that your father and I won't be attending. Neither will Jessica and Bradley. Even though I'd expected it, the confirmation was still devastating. So, that's it? You're really choosing Jessica's ego over being at my wedding. We're choosing family harmony and appropriate values, she corrected. Your sister is very hurt by your actions. And I'm not hurt by yours, I asked, my voice breaking. You've made your choice, Samantha. Now you have to live with the consequences. After hanging up, I sat alone in our apartment until Ryan came home, finding me still in the same spot, staring blankly at the wall. They're not coming, I told him flatly. Any of them. He held me as I cried, not offering empty reassurances or suggesting compromises. He just let me grieve the family support I'd never really had but had always hoped for. Tomorrow, we pick up our marriage license, he said finally. And in 1 week, we're getting married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by people who genuinely support us. That's what matters, Sam. Not who isn't there, but who is. I nodded against his shoulder, trying to believe it. Trying to accept that my wedding day would have a gaping hole where my family should be. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear. Boston showing off with one of those perfect early autumn days, crisp air, golden sunlight, and a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. I woke in the hotel suite I'd booked for pre-wedding preparations, momentarily disoriented before reality crashed back. I was getting married today. Without my family. I checked my phone reflexively. No messages from my parents or Jessica. I wasn't surprised, but the confirmation still stung. Megan arrived with coffee and pastries, followed by my other bridesmaids. They filled the suite with chatter and laughter, carefully avoiding any mention of my absent family. The makeup artist and hairstylist arrived, transforming us one by one. When my turn came, I sat in the chair watching my reflection change, wondering if my parents were thinking about me at all. "You look stunning," Megan said when I was done, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Absolutely radiant." My phone chimed with a message from Ryan. "Can't wait to see you. You're my favorite person in the world, and in a few hours, you'll be my wife. I love you beyond words." Attached was a photo of a small gift box being delivered to my suite. Inside was a delicate sapphire bracelet that perfectly matched my engagement ring, along with a note, "Something blue, to remind you that even rare and precious things can't compare to what we have. All my love, Ryan." I clutched it to my chest, tears threatening to ruin my carefully applied makeup. Megan rushed over with tissues, carefully dabbing under my eyes. "Happy tears only today," she instructed firmly. The photographer arrived to capture getting ready moments, directing us through poses and candid shots. I tried to smile naturally, but each photo felt incomplete. No mother adjusting my veil, no father waiting to see his daughter as a bride. We traveled to the Grand Plaza in a classic white car, the driver navigating Boston traffic with practiced ease. Arriving at the hotel's private entrance, we were escorted to the bridal suite adjacent to the ceremony space. "The guests are being seated now," the coordinator informed me. "Well, begin in 20 minutes. Your father." She hesitated, checking her clipboard. "We don't have anyone listed to walk you down the aisle." "That's correct," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'll be walking alone." She nodded professionally, but I caught the flash of sympathy in her eyes. Through a partially open door, I could glimpse the ceremony space. The florists had transformed it exactly as I'd envisioned, garlands of greenery and vibrant blooms draped from the ceiling, creating an enchanted garden feel. The aisle was lined with lanterns containing flickering candles. At the front, an arch of flowers framed the spot where Ryan and I would say our vows. My eyes drifted to the front row of seats, empty. Reserved with small calligraphed signs, "Family of the bride," a visual reminder of their absence. A gentle knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Ryan's father, Michael, stepped in, looking handsome in his tuxedo. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said softly. "Not at all," I assured him. He shifted uncomfortably. "Samantha, I know I'm not your father, but..." "Well, Ryan told us about your parents' decision. If you'd like someone to walk with you, I'd be honored to escort you down the aisle." The kindness of his offer brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Michael. That means more than you know." As the ceremony time approached, I took a deep breath and looked at my reflection one final time. The woman in the mirror wore a stunning gown of ivory lace and silk, her hair elegantly styled, sapphires at her wrist and ears. She looked like a bride from a magazine, perfect, polished, ready for her perfect day. But the hollowness in her eyes told a different story. The music began, not the traditional wedding march, but the string quartet version of a song Ryan and I both loved. Michael offered his arm, and together we walked to the ceremony entrance. The guests rose as we appeared, and all eyes turned to me. I searched the crowd reflexively, some irrational part of me still hoping to see my parents, perhaps slipped in at the last minute. The empty front row confirmed what I already knew. I looked forward instead, focusing on Ryan waiting at the altar. His face, when he saw me, transformed with such pure joy that my steps faltered. Michael steadied me with a gentle pressure on my arm. "He loves you very much," he whispered. "We all do." The ceremony passed in a blur of emotion. The officiant spoke of commitment and partnership. Ryan and I exchanged the vows we'd written, my voice catching only once when I promised to create a family of love and acceptance with him. When he slipped the wedding band onto my finger, his hands were steady, his eyes never leaving mine. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and the room erupted in applause as Ryan pulled me close for our first kiss as a married couple. The reception began with cocktails in the garden while we took photos. The photographer directed us through poses, capturing our joy despite the shadow of absence. When he suggested family photos, I tensed. "Just with the groom's family," I said quickly. "My family couldn't make it." The photographer, consummate professional that he was, simply nodded and continued. Ryan's parents, his sister and her husband, his grandparents, they all welcomed me into their group photos with genuine warmth. Entering the reception as husband and wife, we were announced to enthusiastic cheers. The ballroom was magnificent tables adorned with the vibrant floral arrangements I'd selected, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across the space, the band playing a upbeat song that immediately filled the dance floor. But my eyes were drawn again to the empty table near the front, the one reserved for the bride's family. 8 empty chairs, place cards with names that would go unclaimed. Our first dance brought me back to the moment, Ryan holding me close as we moved across the floor. "You okay?" he whispered against my hair. "I will be," I promised, resting my head against his shoulder. The father-daughter dance was next on the traditional schedule. WED removed it from the program, but seeing the other fathers in attendance with their daughters sent a fresh wave of grief through me. I excused myself, slipping into a private room off the main hall, needing a moment alone. Sitting in the darkness, I finally allowed myself a moment of honest grief. My own parents had chosen to miss this day not because of illness or distance, but because I hadn't conformed to their expectations. Because I hadn't agreed to live in Jessica's shadow. Even on my wedding day, the door opened, and Megan slipped in. "Everyone's asking for you," she said gently. "The toasts are about to start." "I'll be right there," I said, wiping at my eyes. "I just needed a minute." She sat beside me, taking my hand. "Your parents are idiots for missing this. But look around that room, Sam. It's filled with people who love you and Ryan exactly as you are. That's your real family." I nodded, squeezing her hand. "You're right, and I'm not going to let their absence ruin today." Returning to the reception, I held my head high. Ryan immediately came to my side, his arms circling my waist protectively. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's perfect," I said, and found I meant it. Despite the empty seats, despite the missing family members, the room was filled with love, genuine, accepting love that asked for nothing in return. The toasts began. Ryan's best man shared stories that made everyone laugh. Megan spoke movingly about our friendship and finding true partnership. Ryan's father welcomed me to their family with such sincerity that I had to blink back tears. As the celebration continued, I noticed movement at the entrance to the ballroom. My Aunt Elaine, my father's sister, stood hesitantly in the doorway, elegantly dressed and carrying a small gift. I crossed to her quickly, genuinely surprised. "Aunt Elaine, you came." She hugged me tightly. "I couldn't miss my only niece's wedding, no matter what your father says." "You look absolutely beautiful, Samantha." "Thank you for coming," I whispered, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "It means everything." "Your parents are making a terrible mistake," she said softly. "I've told them as much. But that's their burden to bear, not yours. Today is your day. One relative breaking ranks. One small rebellion against the family mandate. It wasn't everything, but it was something." As the night progressed, I found myself truly enjoying the celebration. We danced until my feet ached, shared cake with laughter, and soaked in the joy surrounding us. When I looked around the room, I no longer focused on who was missing, but on who was present, people who supported our choices and celebrated our happiness. The wedding was everything WED planned, beautiful, joyful, and uniquely ours. The absence of my parents and sister left a mark, but it didn't define the day. What defined it was the love between Ryan and me, and the community of friends and family who stood with us. As we departed amid a shower of flower petals, I realized something important. This day wasn't about proving anything to my parents or outshining Jessica's wedding. It was about beginning our life together exactly as we wanted to live it, authentically, joyfully, and surrounded by genuine love. We spent 2 blissful weeks honeymooning in Greece, exploring ancient ruins by day and watching sunsets over the Mediterranean by night. Away from Boston, away from family drama, I could almost forget the pain of my parents' absence. Ryan and I created our own world, filled with new experiences and memories that belonged only to us. Reality crashed back the moment we turned our phones back on after landing in Boston. No messages from my parents, but Jessica had been busy. Her Instagram feed featured a series of family gatherings that had apparently occurred while we were away: Sunday dinners, a trip to our family's favorite apple orchard, a birthday celebration for a distant cousin I barely knew. Each post dripped with references to family loyalty and being there for the people who truly matter. She's trying to prove they're one big happy family without you, Ryan observed as we scrolled through the posts in the taxi home. And that I'm missing out by not conforming, I added, putting my phone away. Classic, Jessica. For a week, I debated what to do next. Should I reach out to my parents, wait for them to contact me, pretend nothing had happened? The uncertainty was exhausting. What do you want to do? Ryan asked one evening as we unpacked wedding gifts. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. After careful consideration, I decided to attempt reconciliation. Not because I was wrong, but because I couldn't imagine moving forward without at least trying to repair the relationship. The following Sunday, I drove to my parents' house alone. Ryan had offered to come, but I felt this was something I needed to do myself. Standing on their familiar porch, I felt like a stranger. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key, unsure if I still had the right to walk in unannounced. My mother opened the door, her surprise evident. "Samantha, we weren't expecting you. Can I come in?" I asked formally. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Your father is in the living room." The house looked exactly the same furniture, the same photos on the walls, including several of Jessica's wedding, none yet from mine. My father sat in his usual armchair, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed some document. He looked up as I entered, his expression guarded. "Samantha," he acknowledged, setting his papers aside. "You're back from your trip?" "Yes," I said, sitting on the edge of the sofa across from him. "We got back last week." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. My mother perched beside me, smoothing her skirt repeatedly in a nervous gesture. "I thought we should talk," I said finally, "about what happened." "There's not much to discuss," my father replied stiffly. "You made your choice." "I didn't choose for you to miss my wedding," I countered, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You did that. You chose to skip your daughter's wedding because it wasn't identical to her sister's. We chose not to support choices we found inappropriate," my mother corrected. We made our position clear. "Was it worth it?" I asked directly. Was making a point about family values worth missing one of the most important days of my life? Neither answered immediately. My father removed his glasses, cleaning them meticulously with his handkerchief, a delaying tactic I recognized from childhood disagreements. "We stand by our decision," he said finally. "Your wedding was exactly what we feared, extravagant and showy." "How would you know?" "You weren't there." Jessica showed us the photos her friend Taylor shared online. Of course she had. I should have known Jessica would find a way to monitor the wedding. "The point is," my mother interjected, "the day is past. What matters now is moving forward. If you're here to apologize for how you divided the family, apologize," I interrupted, incredulous. "I have nothing to apologize for. I planned a wedding that reflected Ryan and me. You're the ones who delivered an ultimatum and then followed through on it." The sound of the front door opening interrupted our tense exchange. Moments later, Jessica walked into the living room, stopping short when she saw me. "Sam," she said, recovering quickly. "What a surprise, is it? Or did Mom call you the moment I arrived?" Jessica's smile tightened. "I stop by most Sundays. Family tradition. How convenient." Jessica settled into the chair beside our father, creating a visual tableau that perfectly illustrated the family divide. My parents and Jessica on one side, me alone on the other. Sam was just explaining her position, my mother said, as if we were engaged in a formal debate rather than a family discussion. "I understand," Jessica said with manufactured sympathy. "It must be hard to admit when you've taken things too far." Something in her tone, the smug certainty, the absolute conviction of her moral superiority finally ignited years of suppressed anger. "This isn't about the wedding anymore, is it, Jess?" I said, leaning forward. "It never was. This is about you not being able to stand the idea of me having something that might outshine you, even for one day." Jessica's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. I was concerned about family harmony. You were concerned about being the center of attention, as always." I cut in. "You've been the golden child our entire lives. Every achievement celebrated, every decision supported. Do you have any idea what it's like living in that shadow?" Having every choice compared to yours and found wanting? You're being dramatic, Jessica said dismissively. Just because mom and dad have appreciated my practical approach to life, they've favored you in every way possible, I said bluntly. And instead of recognizing your privilege in that, you've done everything in your power to maintain it, including sabotaging my wedding. Samantha, my mother gasped. That's completely unfair, is it? Jessica canceled vendor appointments, hacked our wedding website, spread rumors to relatives, and even tried to change details with our venue by impersonating me. Does that sound like someone concerned with family harmony? Jessica's mask of concern slipped, revealing a flash of the rage beneath. You always have to make everything about you. Your whole life, you've demanded attention with your dramatic declarations and unconventional choices. One time, I asked you to consider someone else's feelings, and you acted like I was committing a crime. You didn't ask, you manipulated mom and dad into issuing an ultimatum on your behalf. And don't pretend this was the first time. You've been ensuring I stay in your shadow our entire lives. That's enough, my father interjected sharply. Samantha, I won't have you attacking your sister this way. Jessica has always been thoughtful and considerate. If you felt overshadowed, perhaps you should have made different choices. The blatant favoritism, even now, was breathtaking. I looked from my father to my mother, searching for any recognition of the unfairness. My mother avoided my gaze, focusing instead on smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her sleeve. I did make a different choice, I said quietly. I chose to have the wedding Ryan and I wanted. I chose not to live according to Jessica's template. And for that, you skipped my wedding. We asked you to consider family feelings, my mother began. No, I interrupted firmly. You asked me to consider Jessica's feelings, only hers, never mine. I stood up, suddenly weary of the entire conversation. I came here hoping we could begin to heal this rift. But that's not possible when you won't even acknowledge the real problem. This family only works when Jessica is centered, and I am peripheral. And I can't live like that anymore. So, you're choosing to divide the family further, my father said, his voice hard. I'm choosing to prioritize my own well-being and my marriage. I corrected him. Just as you've always prioritized Jessica's comfort over mine. I walked toward the door, pausing to look back at the three of them, still a unit, still convinced of their righteousness. When you're ready to have a relationship where I'm not constantly compared to Jessica, you know where to find me. As I drove away, tears blurred my vision, but I felt strangely lighter. For perhaps the first time, I had named the dynamic that had shaped our family for decades. It hadn't changed anything yet, but naming a problem was the first step toward addressing it. Later that afternoon, I met Amber for coffee. She'd become a trusted confidant throughout the wedding drama, and I needed a friendly ear to process the confrontation. So they're still completely Team Jessica, she confirmed after hearing my account. I'm not surprised, but I'm sorry. Me too, I sighed. Though, part of me feels relieved. At least I'm not questioning myself anymore or wondering if I was overreacting. Amber hesitated, stirring her latte thoughtfully. You should know Jessica's marriage isn't going well. Bradley moved out temporarily about 2 weeks ago. She's keeping it quiet, but my mom heard from Aunt Patricia. I had no idea, I said, genuinely surprised. Jessica's social media portrayed nothing but marital bliss. Apparently there's been tension for months. Bradley complained that Jessica's obsession with your wedding took over their lives. Amber gave me a significant look. Your big day may have been a convenient distraction from her own problems. The revelation shifted my understanding of Jessica's behavior. Her desperation to maintain the image of the perfect sister with the perfect life made more sense if that image was crumbling behind the scenes. I don't wish her unhappiness, I said honestly, but I can't be her emotional scapegoat either. Driving home, I reflected on the complex emotions the day had stirred up. There was grief for the family relationship I'd hoped for but never truly had, anger at the persistent unfairness. But also, surprisingly, a growing sense of peace. I had spoken my truth. I had named the dysfunction. And whether or not my family ever acknowledged it, I knew I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. Ryan was waiting when I arrived home, concern evident in his expression. I fell into his embrace, letting the comfort of his arms remind me of the family we were building together, one based on mutual respect, honest communication, and unconditional support. "How did it go?" he asked gently. "About as expected," I replied. "They're still convinced they did nothing wrong." Jessica showed up for reinforcement. Nothing changed. Ryan held me tighter. "I'm sorry." "I'm not really," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "For years, I've tried to earn their approval by being what they wanted me to be. Today, I finally accepted that's not possible and maybe it's not necessary either." That night, I drafted an email to my father. Not an apology, but a statement of boundaries. I explained that while I hoped for eventual reconciliation, it would need to be on terms of mutual respect. I told him I loved him and my mother, but I would no longer accept being compared unfavorably to Jessica or having my choices undermined. I closed by saying my door remained open whenever they were ready to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. His reply came 3 days later, brief, formal, and entirely missing the point. He reiterated their disappointment in my divisive choices and expressed hope that with time and maturity, I would see the wisdom of their position. I read the email twice, then closed it without responding. Some battles couldn't be won with logic or emotional appeals. Sometimes, the only path forward was to accept what couldn't be changed and build something better with the people who truly supported you. 6 months after our wedding, Ryan and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm as husband and wife. Our apartment, once a temporary stopping point, now felt like a true home filled with wedding photos, travel mementos, and the little domestic touches that transform a space from a residence to a sanctuary. The initial sting of my family's rejection had faded to a dull ache, one that occasionally flared when triggered but no longer dominated my daily thoughts. I hadn't spoken to my parents since that Sunday confrontation, though Amber provided occasional updates. Jessica and Bradley had reconciled, at least publicly, though rumors of continued tension persisted. My parents had taken a cruise to celebrate their anniversary, documented extensively on Facebook by my mother. Life continued, separate but parallel. "Do you think about them often?" Ryan asked one evening as we sorted through mail at the kitchen table, a mundane, married moment I cherished. "Less than I used to," I admitted. "It's strange I spent so many years seeking their approval that I didn't realize how exhausting it was until I stopped." The healing hadn't been linear. There were difficult days, holidays especially, when the absence of family traditions left a noticeable void. But we'd begun creating our own traditions. Thanksgiving with Ryan's family, who welcomed me with genuine warmth. A Christmas Eve open house for friends who couldn't travel home. Small rituals that became anchors in our shared life. Therapy had been instrumental in my healing process. Dr. Marshall, a family therapist Ryan's mother recommended, helped me understand the dynamics that had shaped my childhood and continued to influence my adult relationships. "You didn't imagine the favoritism," she assured me during one particularly emotional session. "What you're describing is a classic golden child, scapegoat dynamic, and the pattern rarely changes without significant intervention and willingness from all parties." Understanding that I wasn't too sensitive or dramatic for perceiving the uneven treatment was validating in ways I hadn't expected. So, was recognizing that my parents' choices reflected their limitations, not my worth. One ordinary Tuesday in June, I received an unexpected email from my father, the first contact in nearly 2 months. My heart raced as I opened it, a reflexive hope rising despite my better judgment. The message was brief. Had been thinking about me after seeing a graphic design campaign that reminded him of my style. He asked about my work and mentioned a recent business trip to New York. No mention of our estrangement, no acknowledgement of the ongoing tension, just casual conversation as if nothing had happened. I stared at the screen, conflicted emotions battling within me. Part of me wanted to seize this olive branch, however inadequate. Another part recognized the familiar pattern: my father's ability to compartmentalize difficult emotions, to proceed as if conflict didn't exist until it was convenient to acknowledge it. After careful consideration, I crafted a response that was cordial but maintained my boundaries. I answered his questions about my work briefly, mentioned a recent project I was proud of, and closed with a gentle reminder: "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, Dad." But it needs to be one where we acknowledge the patterns that hurt me in the past and work together to create healthier dynamics. I love you and Mom, and that door remains open whenever you're ready. His reply came 3 days later, friendly but again sidestepping the central issue. He shared news about a neighbor's retirement, mentioned my mother's new gardening project, and closed with, "Your mother and I will always support you, even when we disagree about certain choices." The implication was clear. They considered the wedding conflict a simple disagreement rather than a symptom of deeper issues. Their version of reconciliation was one where we simply moved past it without addressing the underlying causes. I showed Ryan both emails that evening. "Am I being unreasonable?" I asked. "Should I just accept this and move on?" Ryan considered the question seriously. "That depends on what you want from the relationship going forward. If you're okay with continuing the same patterns, then sure, this is an opening, but if you're hoping for real change," he trailed off, the conclusion obvious. "I can't go back to being the family scapegoat," I said quietly. "I won't." Our wedding photos arrived that week, a beautiful leather-bound album capturing the joy, tears, and celebration of the day. Together, Ryan and I paged through them, reliving each moment. There were obvious gaps: no father-daughter dance, no parents of the bride in the formal portraits, but those absences were overshadowed by the genuine happiness evident in every image. "You were the most beautiful bride I've ever seen," Ryan said, his finger tracing the outline of my face in our favorite photo, the two of us, silhouetted against the setting sun, foreheads touching, lost in our private moment of connection. "It was perfect, wasn't it?" I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "Even with everything that happened before, the day itself was perfect. It was us," Ryan said simply. "Authentic, not performed for anyone else's approval." That, I realized, was what had most threatened my family about our wedding. Not the chandeliers or the menu or the live band, but the authenticity, the bold statement that we would live our lives according to our own values, not theirs. 2 weeks later, Amber called with an update that gave me perspective on Jessica's fixation with my wedding. "She's telling everyone that Bradley got a huge promotion, and they're looking at houses in Lexington," Amber reported. "But my cousin works in his office, and he says Bradley's actually on probation for missing deadlines. They can barely afford their current mortgage." Why does she do that? I wondered aloud. Create this perfect image that's so disconnected from reality. "I think she's terrified of being seen as anything less than perfect," Amber suggested. "Your parents set impossible standards, and she's killing herself trying to maintain them." The insight brought an unexpected wave of empathy for my sister. Jessica was as much a victim of our family dynamics as I was, albeit in a different way. Her golden child status came with its own burden: the expectation of continued perfection, the fear of disappointing our parents, the pressure to maintain an increasingly elaborate facade. That didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me understand it. And understanding allowed me to release some of the anger I'd been carrying. At work, a new opportunity emerged that provided a welcome creative outlet. The agency had landed a major client rebrand, and my portfolio had caught the creative director's attention. Being selected as lead designer validated my professional skills in a way that felt particularly meaningful after years of having my creative pursuits dismissed by my family as impractical hobbies. "You were right to stand your ground," my colleague Marcus told me after a particularly successful client presentation. "Your instincts on this project have been spot on." Those simple words of professional validation meant more than he could know. Being valued for exactly the qualities that had always been overlooked or criticized in my family helped heal old wounds. Ryan and I began tentatively discussing our future beyond our apartment, possibly buying a house, eventually starting a family. These conversations inevitably raised questions about what relationship our future children might have with my parents. "I don't want to deprive them of grandparents," I said one evening as we walked along the Charles River. "But I also can't expose them to the same favoritism I experienced." "Well, establish clear boundaries," Ryan assured me. "Any relationship they have with our kids will be on our terms, with our values." The confidence in his voice bolstered my own resolve. We would create a family culture of acceptance and support. Our children would be loved for who they were, not for how well they conformed to predetermined expectations. As our first anniversary approached, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of my parents' absence at our wedding remained a scar, but scars were evidence of healing as much as of injury. I had grown stronger, more confident in my own worth, more capable of setting healthy boundaries. I still hoped for eventual reconciliation with my parents, but I no longer needed their approval to validate my choices. I had learned that family could be defined by love and mutual respect rather than by biology alone. Ryan's parents, Amber, Megan, and the friends who had stood with us through the wedding drama, they were family too, chosen and cherished. Our wedding day, despite my family's absence, had ultimately been illuminated rather than shadowed by their choice. It had shown me with painful clarity the difference between conditional and unconditional love. Between relationships based on conformity and those based on acceptance. As I look toward our future, the home we'll build, the family we hope to create, the life we're shaping together, I'm grateful for that clarity, hard-won though it was. The empty seats at our wedding taught me a lesson. I'll carry forward. True love celebrates authenticity rather than demanding conformity. I no longer need to earn my place at the table. I no longer measure my worth against my sister's achievements. I no longer contort myself to fit into someone else's definition of success. That freedom to be fully, authentically myself is the unexpected gift that emerged from my parents' painful choice. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself even when it meant disappointing family? How did you handle the conflict between being true to yourself and meeting others' expectations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in their family struggles. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the family we create through love and choice is stronger than the one we're born into.